Hey everybody, this is Jamie Loves Martial Arts. I'm here with Cal Jones, and this is the sixth episode of the Martial Praxis podcast. And I'm really excited to have Cal on. I've seen some of his content on YouTube and watched some of his. He has a great interview and a recorded class, and I've gotten a lot out of it. So I wanted to bring him on and pick his brain. Do you think you could just start by telling us a little bit about your background with both martial arts, judo, and also CLA?
Yeah, sure. So I started judo when I was five. So I've done 31 years of it now, hence the grays. Um, Coaching since I was 14. So I started assistant coaching when I was 14. My judo coach asked if I'd help him out coaching in some schools after school club. So I did, and I enjoyed it. So I took over my own club full time when I was 16 or 17, I think. And I've been coaching since then, really. Uh, did bits of mixed martial arts and bits of sort of general grappling stuff. When would that have been? 2005, 2004. Um, but I didn't like getting punched in the face. It was pretty unpleasant. So I thought I'll stick with just strangling people. It's much less painful. Uh, Constraints that approach, probably intentionally doing it for a decade. But my coaching practice before that was kind of underpinned by a teaching games for understanding framework anyway. So there was quite a lot of overlap. I just wasn't aware of a lot of the more intricate nuances of ecological dynamics that I think are important and help you design better practice tasks. So as I've been more of a nerd, I've done hopefully better practice tasks now than I did then. And hopefully in 10 years I'll be doing better practice tasks than I do today.
Is that something that you like inherited from your coach, or something you just decided? Because you said you were kind of already doing some a lot of games in your practice.
Yeah, sort of accidentally. So my coach was really laissez-faire. He was a really just sort of chill guy. So when all the clubs around us were just doing rote rehearsal of moves, he was
Yeah.
just having us play crazy games. And it just so happened that doing loads of crazy games made us really good at judo. So we'd turn up to these clubs where I remember there was a club down the road that used to hand out a technique of the week sheet. And they had this little ring binder full of it. And when you get your grading, look, you've got your techniques of the week. And all the parents were like, oh, look how professional it is. Look at all these technique of the weeks. And my crazy old judo coach had us playing pirate games and charging each other down. And we'd just absolutely smoke them in any competition. It was, and quite a revelatory thing. So very early on, I had decided what is the point of doing this regressive, boring, tedious nonsense when you can get very good not doing the boring, regressive, tedious nonsense. Uh,
100%.
yeah, so I think he was accidentally very kind of ecologically minded. He would himself admit that he wouldn't really understand any of the science behind it. He wasn't intentionally designing specified information into practice tasks. Uh, but he understood the general principle of sneaking in the good bits into stuff that's more palatable.
Yeah, I think it's great for kids. We've at the gym that I coach at, we've completely moved to the kids class in the direction of just pure ecological dynamics. There's almost no drilling in the class anymore, and it's so much more fun, and they're so much more engaged. We do occasionally get a parent or two who doesn't really like it. They're like, why don't you show the moves step by step? And it's like, well, turns out that's not actually the best way to teach them. My argument with them is always, look, if they're having trouble remembering the one task objective that I'm giving them during the games, how do you expect them to remember a move that has 17 steps while they're fighting
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you still tie their shoelaces?
someone?
Then maybe they're not ready to learn a 16-point framework of how to do a hip bump.
This brings up kind of an interesting question and thing that I've been toying around with, because there's so many really talented and skilled martial artists out there that I know of who practice in information processing traditional, they do solo movements, and then they drill the move, and then they try to execute it in sparring. And I kind of have this idea I've been toying around with that it's not that information processing style training, the traditional way of training, that it never works. It's just that only the most talented and kind of naturally gifted students and learners can make that work. You have to be really invested, really intrinsically motivated. You have to have all of these qualities already, and then you can kind of make that work. And even then, it's probably not the most efficient way to train, but what do you think about that? Does that kind of track with what you've noticed or not really?
It's more the talent graveyard, really. There's always some people
Yes.
that survive. The assumption we have this post hoc justification when somebody is successful. We look back on their practice and go, ah, they did kata, so kata must mean they became a world champion. What we neglect to mention is they also trained 20 hours a week doing
Yes.
hard sparring with some of the best athletes on earth multiple times a week. So, if I was training at John Danaher's place and I was roided to the gills and was more genetically gifted than I currently am, and also I brushed my hair with olive oil every night, I wouldn't look back and go, oh, but it's the olive oil. That's what made me
Yes.
good. But we do have a tendency to look back and go, oh, no, but very good player did X, so X must mean very good player. Uh, I think essentially what happens is the people that are doing a more traditional approach also do randori. They're also doing open
Yes.
sparring, and that's where they become skillful. So if we presume that they are wasting, they're spending, let's say, three-quarters of an hour doing nonsense and a quarter of an hour doing actual stuff that gets them better. Whatever that nonsense is, they've still got a quarter of an hour of doing something effective. So again, if they were brushing olive oil in their hair for that 45 minutes, they're still getting 45 minutes. If they're training 5 days a week, they're still
Yeah.
getting a fair amount of time that they're doing something that is useful.
No, that's
Um,
a really good point. Yeah,
but
I
yeah, it's
think
very difficult to draw
sometimes people
causation.
are successful despite what they're doing as opposed to because of it. And it's very hard in retrospect to look back and kind of figure out, okay, is this thing that they're doing actually what caused them to be good? Or is it just something extraneous that, the olive oil is a great example. And some of these things might even be detrimental. It's funny that you bring up Danaher because I've had this suspicion for a long time where when you watch his instructionals, especially his, a little bit less so with Gordon's, but he starts every instructional by giving you they might not quite be invariants, but he lays out the invariants of the position. He's like, here's the standing position, and here are your three hand fighting goals from the standing position. And then the rest of the DVD is extrapolated out from that. So I was thinking to myself for a long time, I'm like, is he actually doing some kind of like differential learning or CLA in the training room and then just selling these techniques to everybody for hundreds of dollars as a way not only to make money but smoke screen what he's really doing. And then just the other day, well, I did an interview with a person who trains with him a couple episodes ago, and he talked about it a little bit. And then Danaher put out a filmed version of one of his classes, and I'm watching it, and he has them doing these creativity drills where they're like, he's like, okay, you're gonna pass this person's guard, pass their guard as many different ways as you can. And he's basically, doing differential learning style training, and I was just amazed. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I suspected. I wonder if ever since the whole like ecological thing got out of the bag that he just decided, you know what, like I'm just gonna show people. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, in all honesty, I suspect that the majority of practice looks like that. Um,
Yeah.
People tend to coach the way that they were coached, but they're aware of what gets them better. So there are some things that are just vestigial. There are traditions that exist. Like I know if I turn up to a judo class, I can tell you what their warm-up will be ahead of time. There will
Yeah.
be some running around the mat, they'll be touching the corners, they'll be doing some roly-polies across the mat. Great. That's just a vestigial thing that has been the case since I was a child. They're
Yes.
not doing it because they're going, this is the maximal way to develop skill. It's running around and touching corners and jumping when I say it's a nonsense, right? So I suspect that we're very much the same in most people's grappling classes. They
Yes.
sometimes cling to, we're going to do this rote repetition because I have this sort of misunderstanding of like muscle memory. They're
Yes.
not informed, or they're very rarely informed by having read the literature on information processing and gone, oh no, actually, I'm a big proponent of Schmidt schema theory. Let's do some rote repetition. Like if they had read Schmidt schema theory, they would be against it. Like
Yeah.
this is the ironic thing.
They would realize, hey,
The
this is almost
argument,
ridiculous.
yeah, it's the grand irony really is the argument between information processing and ecological dynamics isn't in what practice looks like. It's why practice looks the way it does.
Yes.
So the information processing people talk about parameterizing. So they will have developed some general motor program, uh, and as soon as they have a working version of a general motor program, it's about parameterizing it to meet novel situations. So you don't want to do mass rote repetition. You want to do lots and lots of variability so that you can move and adjust all of the coordination patterns that you've built into these novel positions. As a proponent of ecological dynamics, I don't think that's happening. I think we undergo soft assembly and self-organization to solve emergent problems in front of us.
If you
Uh,
do too much information processing style training and too much drilling, you just won't.
yeah,
I
I mean, you turn into a kata player, right? It's
yes.
who cares? Like
Well,
it has
it's
its own
funny
merit
because
if yeah. Sorry.
no, no, totally fine. Like in my personal training, I've always worked in the gym, so I never would be on the mat for drilling. I was always selling memberships or like cleaning or doing something during the drilling, and would just hop on the mat for sparring. And when I would train with people or compete against people who did a lot of drilling, it was like I could hear them thinking. Like I know what system they're playing. I was like, I watched that DVD too. You're doing that thing from Danaher's leg lock system, and then I would do something totally different than a move that's not, I know isn't in the DVD, and they have no answer for it. And it was always so funny to me. I was like, you guys spend 3 hours a day drilling this stuff, and I just did a sambo leg lock on you that I saw once on a YouTube video that I never practiced before. So I actually think that if you do too much of that style training, it sort of limits your ability to deal with novelty because you're so used to thinking inside the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And almost as important, or probably more importantly, you don't actually have those skills. You're
Yeah.
aware of like a hierarchy of some spider diagram of they do this, you do this, but you
Yes.
haven't had that as an embodied skill yet. It's knowledge about, not knowledge of, right? I'm
Yes.
aware of, oh, this is a response I can make when somebody posts their hand here, but I've not done it. I've not gone through all of those adjustments of playing against the party that really, really does not want me to win. They like winning too. So when I'm trying to do whatever skill set I'm trying to do on them, there's some utility to the movements I'm doing. It has to overcome an opponent. So any
Yes.
rote repetition is going through this rehearsal of a move that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It only exists in the boundaries of what our opponent is doing. Their actions are the mold that shapes how we move.
Yes.
Uh, and I think a lot of the time there's just this misunderstanding of what skill is. It's I'll learn the move, then I can just do the move.
Nope.
It would be lovely, like it'd be brilliant if I could just sit down and watch a couple of I don't know, Gordon Ryan DVDs and then I'm actually Gordon Ryan. That'd be incredibly useful. But yeah, reality bites.
No, there's a big gap between, like you said, having knowledge about particular positions and particular moves, and then actually being able to apply those based off of having the skills to get into those positions. It's like, all right, here's a technique from an underhook, but are you able to actually achieve an underhook? And that's one of the most important skills in like in nogi stand up. Can you achieving an underhook is one of the most critical things. And instead of actually showing people or having people practice doing it, instead they're just shown techniques from underhooks. So what good is
Yeah, I know. It's wild, isn't it? If you ever
that?
get to here, here's some things you can do. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the big questions I have for you is watching that class that you have on YouTube. You have there's a really great game where you're doing the tug of war, and then you kind of develop it into the landmine stuff. And I'm just curious, how did you come up with that? Because that's something that I've been working on constraints led approach games for foot sweeps for like a year, and I couldn't find a way to expand like to create this time dilation of where the affordance is to do a foot sweep because it requires such precise timing. I'm just curious, like how you came to that.
Uh, the tug of war game we used to play when I was a child. Essentially, my coach had accidentally created a really, really useful practice task for developing touch in
Yeah.
sweeps. Uh, so we also did a thing that he used to call "Shall We Dance?" There's a scene in, I think it's The King and I, where they're teaching. I don't know. I don't watch. I have seen, but don't. I'm not. I'll move on. There's a little dance routine that this woman starts showing the king or whatever. They have this "Shall we dance?" thing that goes on in the background. And he used to have us do like a rote rehearsal of a foot sweep, but it was just to learn the syncopated rhythm. That it's this like
Yes.
I have to do two moves on one beat. So
Yep.
that isn't an especially ecologically sound practice task. There's some attuning to that broken rhythm, but it was just essentially I was going through a rote repetition of a thing and you were
Yep.
taking advantage of it, but you knew ahead of time what I was doing. So it's not a thing that I utilize really at all, but this just sort of shows the genius of the band. Like 30 years ago, he was going, huh, how can I get them to figure out this weird little broken rhythm?
Yes.
And yeah, I've basically stolen the tug of war. And then landmines, I realized that we're getting really good at linear sweeps, but we don't have linear fights. We're not fencing, right? We have a
Yes.
broader track we can cover. So to get pulls from multiple directions, just shove some stuff on the floor. I think I might have seen the landmines game without sweeps as a warm-up game on some DVD years and
Yeah.
years ago. Uh, but I thought this is just constantly creating perfect opportunities for me to explore sweeps. So just married the two together.
And then another question I have, like kind of jumping off this, is how would you create a game for ashiwaza techniques? Or it's weird because you start talking about, and I've heard you talk about this before too, and it's something I've kind of come to is families of techniques rather than individual techniques. So you kind of have to group them. But when we're talking about foot sweeps, there's foot sweeps that are coming towards us, like kouchigari, kosotogari. You're generally pulling the foot towards you, as in, and it works perfect with the tug of war. But something like the ashi harai, or I know there's a couple where you're moving backwards. How would you try to encourage people to use those techniques? Would you create a different like situation?
Yeah, so for if they're going backwards, we can use the same game because we're getting that same break of balance. So
Yeah.
as you pull me, I can create that action reaction to get these positions. So I'm fine with that for anything that's linear, forward and back.
Yep.
But something like an akuriashi barai, the one where they step sideways and you do
Sideways.
the
Yeah.
yeah. If we're playing something like that, I tend to play like floor is lava games. So there'll be a track of mats behind you and
Ah.
I'm if I can push you in to the mats, I would score myself a point. If you can reverse the position and get me in, you would score a point, or I can throw you. So we get these really exaggerated pushing mechanics. They start trying to push you backwards, so they're not going into the juice, or they'll start trying to circle. And when they
Yes.
start circling, you get step across Tayatoshis, you get attacks that exploit that sideways step, but you also get following foot sweeps that end up chasing their foot into moments.
So this is super interesting because it's something that I had watched your class and I was playing with it, and then I tend to like just sign up for random martial arts competitions. So I had signed up. They were doing a sumo competition in New York,
Awesome.
and I signed up for it, and I was able to win mostly using Shuaijiao stuff. Like I do a lot of Chinese wrestling, and I basically just used that stuff. We have push out in Chinese wrestling, and I personally don't like the push out game. I think it's so risky because when you get to the edge of the mat, it becomes the it just becomes so complex. Like you could push them out, but they also can turn you, and they might throw you, and there's all these problems with it. So I just stay in the middle and take the person down. Um, but what I realized after the sumo was I was like, wow, the pushing, all of this pushing, trying to keep yourself in the ring and push the other person out, it acts as an accelerant for the takedown game. So you have more affordances to take the other person down than you would without all that pushing. And it made me think this is a great training method for, judo, Chinese wrestling, get in this small ring and push each other out. And then I realized, like, oh, this is the opposite. This is just the inverse of the game you had designed with the tug of war. It's just like anti-sumo. You have to pull them out. You can't push them out.
Yeah, yeah. No, we do loads of sumo as well. I'm very much in agreement. We're essentially taking an affordance and we're just extending it. It's
Yeah.
uh, it's exaggerating the haptic feedback. You get the feeling of, wait, that weight's coming towards me. Maybe
Yes.
I should turn and throw them. You learn to attune to that bit of information, and it just happens more quickly. If you're doing normal standing randori against somebody that's equally skilled, they very rarely overreach like a comedy
Yes.
sketch. So as long as we end up going from this really exaggerated longer duration affordance to start calibrating it and putting it within the context of the sport, there's
Yep.
loads of value there. Yeah.
That's also something I was going to ask about that you just mentioned with the usage of these types of games where like as you said, the haptic feedback is exaggerated. So this is something that it's my initial thinking with it is it's sort of like on a progression from it being a little bit less representative of the sport towards being more representative. But I also think what you said is that's another great usage of it is you have two people who are equally matched and it gets a bit boring, a bit stally. They're sort of just canceling each other out. This is a great way to just accelerate it and have like let's have some action and have some skill development instead of you guys just blocking each other.
Yeah, that will mean a rule where if they draw, they lose. That's always a cracking way to force them to fight.
Yes.
Um, so no, I very much agree. It's a really useful thing. So as long as we are aware that in sliding down the scale of representativeness, we are compromising some fidelity and kind of the accuracy of how we are moving is compromised a little bit. Um, the important thing is that when we slide down this scale of representativeness, awful word, we don't compromise the information present. So we have to reduce complexity without impoverishing the information scape.
Yes.
So if I don't have a thing that I'm moving in relation to, then it's basically drilling. It's not actually a skill attunement task anymore. Not to say showing the moves is wrong, but doing rote repetitions of the move ad nauseum to develop muscle memory is where the contention
Yes.
comes in. Yeah.
Can you give an example of how could you neuter one of these games and kind of ruin it?
As in, if I was playing it,
Well, no, I mean,
if I was designing it, how could I make
if
it
you were
crap?
designing the game and you were to like just could you give an example of how you could either take it in the direction where you're not impoverishing the information, which we already have some examples of that, or what's something you could do that would impoverish it?
Yes, I suppose the example I gave with my coach's staccato rhythm "Shall We Dance" game, the information I'm attuning to isn't the degree of representativeness is really compromised because I know so far in advance that they will be moving like that. So I'm
Yes.
not having to pick up on that information and coordinate my action off it in real time. The degree of representativeness is really compromised. So I avoid it unless somebody has really, really, really struggled with understanding that I'm sure the word syncopate, that broken rhythm thing that goes
Yes.
on. Then it's useful to say, there's this weird little broken rhythm thing. We'll do a 30 seconds of Shall We Dance and then move on because the information that we're coupling to isn't real. It's this false thing. It'd be like if I say, right, I'm going to do this, haha, and then you do an Ippon Seoinage. Like,
Yes.
yeah, sure.
So there's something I've been playing with, and I'm curious about what you think about it. And feel free to rip it apart if you think it's a bad idea. But there's so with a number of techniques, and also for I also train Tamiki Aikido. I've done Tamiki Aikido for like 10 years, and one thing I've been playing with is utilizing a metronome as a way of making things easier when a lot of timing is involved. So with like for example defending wrestling shots, I'll just put a metronome on and I'll say the lowest version of the game is the player has to shoot every time the metronome dings. So it's like a really slow I forget the Italian names for the for the paces, but it's really slow. It's like 20 beats per minute, right? And every time the metronome clicks, they have to take a shot. And that shot, the reason I adopted this was that this way the player could shoot as hard and as fast as they can shoot, but the other player is aware of when it's going to happen, and it makes it quite easy to defend. And then they can go into defending the shot however they want, and doing the same thing with the Tamiki Aikido and the stab. So you can stab either on the ding of the metronome, or and then progressing towards you can stab or shoot or not on the ding of the metronome, and just using this as a way to lower the intensity so that people can practice whatever it is they want to do, and kind of give them a goal and some intention, but keep the intent of trying to hit the person, just making it predictable.
Uh, for me, I would try and avoid something that makes things more predictable,
Got it.
because they're not actually attuning to that information then. They are aware of it ahead of time. It becomes the throwing a basketball from the same spot on the court over and over and over and over and over.
They're tuning
I
to the
just
metronome as opposed to the actual information in the environment.
Exactly that. Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
So me placing my shot in doesn't happen because I have identified an affordance. It's not me creating an affordance. It's not the broken rhythm of you taking an off step that lets me know that my penetration step will catch it as your foot lands. It's
Yes.
just now. So you're attuning to the wrong information. So for me, I'd avoid it. I don't think it would be that useful for transfer. Um, if you want to do it for the joy of it, yeah.
No,
Like
no,
I think
this is a
we
very
get
good
stuck
point.
on skill acquisition a lot. Like if you just think it'd be fun and you think they'd enjoy doing it, then yeah. But I don't think that it would help perception action coupling to develop. It probably would make them more skillful.
Essentially, because they're attuning to the wrong information. That's kind of the key. I think the
Yeah,
key
exactly
problem
that.
there. So, how one thing that goes on in martial arts, it's somebody said to me, they're like, it's ubiquitous in martial arts, and I'm like, well, that doesn't mean it's right. That is, there's always this desire to train at a lowered intensity, and between like it seems that sometimes it might be useful, right, for certain purposes to lower the intensity a little bit. But is there a way to do that? That this is the thing I keep trying to understand is how can we actually achieve this? Because you tell people go 50% or go 70%. And it's like, what does that mean? Like I'm gonna use 50% of my speed or 50% of my strength, or I'm just not gonna do some moves. So I'm wondering, like, have you dealt with this at all where you're trying to get people to slow down a little bit or just lower the intensity for the sake of learning more? But how do you actually achieve that using constraints as opposed to telling them to do something that's impossible? Or is that something you're not interested in? Because I go back and forth with maybe it's not the most important thing.
The utility of it only really exists in the time scale of a match. The match duration is the thing that constrains how quickly we want to be moving, the intensity we
Yeah.
put in. If I
Yes.
know I'm going in for an hour-long submission only event, I'm probably going to put less effort into all of my movements than if I'm in a quintet style, if you draw, you're off, go and win in 3 minutes type event.
Yes.
So the duration of an event, of the constraint, of the task, the duration as a constraint for the task, there we go, uh, modulates the intensity that they work with really frequently.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, it's not really something that I intentionally attend to very often, purely because we have such disparate approaches to how we grapple. Like,
Yes.
if I'm a super slow twitch fiber, long, skinny, I've got arms and legs everywhere type player, I might
Yes.
have a really slow pace
Yep.
versus the type 2B could jump 10 foot high, but
Yes.
his upper body is like a gorilla guy, right? He's probably going
Yes.
to be more intense in how he approaches grappling, regardless of the time duration. That
Yes.
guy, if he was forced to compete in an hour-long submission only event, is probably burning out 3 minutes in, but will have won or lost in that time frame.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I think that our internal intrinsic dynamics tend to take care of that. I wouldn't intentionally ask people, or very rarely, if ever, ask people to go at like 50% or to try and get them to go at a pace, because all it means is that you get good at solving the problem of fighting someone who fights you in slow motion. Like,
Yes.
I don't care if I can beat someone that's moving at 50% speed. Like,
Yeah,
what's the
that's not
point?
useful. Yes.
Yeah, it's like if I made you fight a 5-year-old because you'd be really good against them. So what? Like, unless you're
Yeah.
competing against 5-year-olds, it's not really that useful. It's the same if you're competing, if you're practicing against someone that's moving at 50% or they're not strengthening out of a hold. Well, unfortunately, we can strength out of holds, right?
Yes.
If I've got this entanglement on your sleeve, but my entanglement isn't sufficient to maintain purchase while you try and free your arm, I need to develop some skill set to keep
Yeah.
that grip. It's not enough to say, no, you're just strong. You're just using strength. Like, yeah, you're using skill and flexibility, and
Yeah.
that's unfair as well. Sod off.
Well, that's the whole problem with it, anyways, is that everyone's game is a combination of certain attributes and certain skills that they have, and that all works in a cohesive fashion together. And to separate things out, you start getting really weird results. If someone's really strong and they have techniques that they're complementary to them being really strong, and you tell them not to use their strength, suddenly nothing they do works at all. And then you go 100% and they absolutely smash you. It's kind of it's not representative of what actually is going to happen.
Yeah, not at all. Uh, while it's in my head, sorry. One of the things that
Yes,
we do sometimes do is we'll do some sort of practice task that is intentionally designed to induce fatigue,
this
so
is
that you
something
end
I
up
thought of. Yeah,
fighting. Yeah, because obviously the affordances that I can accept when I'm fresh and in the start of a fight are very different to the affordances that I can accept in the 9th minute of a bout where I've been crushed by some freak for the whole time. So being able to fight in those positions, I have different action capabilities. My effectivities have changed because of the fatigue that I have induced across the training practice tasks, right? Across the competition. So our training practice tasks sometimes have to replicate that. Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't spend all of my time, oh, you've been smashed for 9 minutes, now fight. But it is really useful to be aware when I don't have the same explosivity that I did then, and my forearms are on fire because I've been hanging on to Spider Guard crying that you keep
yes.
passing me. At some point, I have to modulate how I approach my strategies, my yeah, the things I look to do.
It also
So
sort
yeah.
of functions like as noise to find new, comfortable attractors. Like you might fall into something. I had this really weird experience where I only found out much later on, but I was sparring with somebody who was quite large, and they cranked my neck, and it broke my neck, but I didn't know at the time. So I continued training throughout the month, but I my left arm was it was like non-functional. So like I would lift my arm up and it would just start falling down. Like I couldn't hold it up, and I had one of the most like largest jumps in my skill during that month when I couldn't use my left. All I could do was hold a grip. So I
Jeez.
developed this really weird like half guard game where I would just kind of invert and grab my other hand, and I had this huge jump in skill at this time where I couldn't use my arm. And I now looking back, I kind of understand what happened in terms of, oh, that was like noise that forced me to find new solutions, and it turned out those were really good solutions.
So what you're saying essentially is if you want a really quick development, just break your neck.
Yes, exactly.
Deal. You
That's
heard it
my
here first.
advice. So another kind of question I have for you, and it's interesting because I almost feel like this is more a judo question than a ecological dynamics question. But when we're talking about these groups of throws, you got your turny backy blocky thingies. Your I was using this to teach the little kids the other day, and all the parents are looking at me, and the kids are loving it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like your kids have more originality than you guys do. Like
Right.
I like the 4-year-olds better than you old people. But so you have, turny backy, blocky throws, turny backy, lifty, and then you have your sacrifice techniques, and then basically like ashiwaza, where you're facing the person. Um, what are the key like preconditions that you need to achieve to make these successful? Because I think this is something that would be really helpful for people looking to design games for them.
Yeah, it's the same. We're blessed and cursed that we are all doing the same sport. Like there's only so many ways you can manipulate people and throw them on the floor and then make
Yeah.
them go ow. Uh, so the principles of stand-up play are pretty much the same as if we were prone, right? I need to do something that destroys your posture and your structural supports. I need to get your center of mass past your base of support, and then I need
Yes.
to either lift you up and flip you, a la sweepy things, or make your belly button fall forward and stop you from putting some sort of structure down. Like a hip bump, if you can put your hand out, won't work. But if I block this hand from going out, you will fall over. So a
Yes.
turning backy blocking is that. I'm turning my
Yes.
back, I'm blocking your leg. The thing that makes you fall to the floor is I smash your face forward really quickly and I punch it
Yes.
towards the floor. And if you can't put a support down, a structural support to stop you from falling, in this case, a leg, you land on the floor. And I
Yep.
look really cool. Uh, for lifting throws, they're really similar things. We, in a position that instead of tripping them forward, we pick them up. So the thing I'm more concerned with when I personally do them is less shifting their center of mass past their base of support. That's an advantage if I can. What I prefer is to just destroy their structures. So if I can take them out of alignment, so their spine instead of being tall is sort of quasimodoed a bit, it makes my life a million times easier because I can attack without fear of counterattack,
Yes.
which is super, super valuable for a turny backy lifty. Um, yeah, pretty much that. So it's the same as if we were playing a sweeping game. It's can I stop you from putting structures down? Can I lift your center of mass so it is above my center of mass and I can manipulate you? Can I break your posture so that you are no longer in a strong, stable position, right? If I'm playing God and you are in my God and you are sat back, butt on your heels, hands on the top of my hip bones, keeping me compressed, you're winning. Like
Yes.
you have all of the advantage on earth. You've got mobility, you've got gravity, you are winning. If I can get your hands off me, I can compromise your posture so that you're leant forward, and maybe there's a bit of a bend in your spine. Oh, crisp.
Yeah.
I'm probably the one that has wrested the advantage away from you. So there is an inherent advantage in positions, and we can create a sort of contingent advantage by breaking down their postures and their structures. Same thing exists standing. There's no inherent advantage because we are both just stood facing each other,
Yes.
unless I outgrip you, but I'm sure we'll come to that later.
Yeah.
Uh, if I can break your posture, I'm winning. Like, it doesn't matter if you've got the best judo on earth. If I can get you to here and you're this guy and I'm tall, I'm probably going to win. Like, that
Yes.
is the sport. The sport is can
Yep.
you create instability without them being able to put things on the floor to stop them falling over? So the throw that we choose to do, the utility of it, I'm more interested in than the names of Japanese throws. So I'm 6'1". For me, putting an arm over somebody's shoulder and lifting them is more comfortable than putting my arm in an underhook position if we're both
Yep.
stood upright. So I would do something like a koshi garuma, whereas if I was 5'3", I might do an ogoshi. They are the same throw. Like the
Yes. Yes.
Japanese give them different names, but I'm gonna say it quietly, they're wrong. It's the
Yes.
same move, right? How I attach you to me changes the name in Japanese, but the kinematics, the thing that I do to lift you up and flip you over, is really similar. I'm bending, keeping a back tall, attaching you to me, straightening legs, flippy thing. So
Yes.
if I choose to do an Ippon Seoinage or a Koshi Karuma or an Ogoshi or a Tsurukomagoshi or a Sodo Tsurukomagoshi or but it's the
Yeah.
same thing. I'm
Yes.
just
Yes. Yes.
attaching differently to you. Yeah.
No,
But yeah.
absolutely. I've had a lot of the more I start to study judo, I've done judo for a long time, but never consistently. There's always some weird obstacle towards me practicing. Um, but what I've noticed as I start to study the names of the throws is that it's so all over the place, and it's actually weird coming from Chinese wrestling where the names are probably equally complex, but they just for whatever reason the system of it makes a lot more sense to me. And there's actually like reasons why they would call something different, and when there's it's not different, they don't call it something different. They'll just use the same word. um, but yeah, there's it's so interesting with the names because I'll see people post something on Instagram and everybody in the comments is arguing about what throw it is. And it's like if you can't tell, then maybe this isn't a good way to go about it, you know? Like it's Uchimata. No, that's Hanegoshi. He's on his hip, like it's like
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like it's a semantic argument for again, it's possibly uncharitable, but I think a lot of people are attracted to the Japanese martial arts
yeah,
because they are interested in Japan. They
yes,
kind of like playing at being Japanese.
yes, a hundred
They're
percent.
attracted to the culture. I say this as someone with like a cherry blossom with two Acer trees underneath it in my
Yeah, yeah,
garden
I have a samurai
that
sword at home,
has
but
samurai swords and yeah, like Shogun Total War is one of my most played games. I'm a Japanophile, but I
yes,
also appreciate that I'm a 36-year-old Welsh dude. Like
yes,
I couldn't care less if you get loads of pleasure out of doing kata and quibbling over whether it's a Hanaigoshi or an Uchimata. Like for
yeah,
some people, that is joyous for them. I've said this before, but like I collect Warhammer and
yeah,
like I enjoy engaging in debates about religion with strangers sometimes. Like what I do for fun isn't what other people do for fun. Like that's
yes,
fine, but the issue is when you start using these little clarifying terms or saying, no, 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 it's an uchimata, so you have to have your body in these positions,
yes.
but the guy's just won an Olympic gold medal. Like,
Yeah, what does it
you should
matter?
not be critiquing this gentleman. You should be going,
Yes.
no, nice throw. Well done, you.
Yeah,
Um,
whatever throw it is, it was really good. It's
yeah,
very good.
right. Yeah, it's quite
It's
an
also
interesting thing.
confusing with Hare Ghosh and Osotogari in the sense that sure, good Osotos go back. Well, a traditional Osoto goes backwards, right? But when you see everyone apply Osoto live, they're usually going sideways, right? And then it's like, is that Osoto or is it Hare Ghosh? Like it's very weird.
Yeah, it becomes this weird thing that we're essentially attuning to their reaction. So I'm putting my
Yes.
leg into a position to apply a leggy, reapy, attacky thing.
Yeah.
If you lean into me, I change the direction of my hips and it will be a harai.
Yeah.
If you don't, and I can overpower you, I'll be doing an oso.
Yes.
But there's this whole category at this sort of
Gray
between
area.
45 degrees and 90 degrees and 45 degrees that you've used your leg, you've boshed their legs out of the way and plonked them on the floor. Like,
And
yeah.
for the sake of being effective, it might make sense rather than focusing on in your head saying, I'm doing this throw, I'm going for Harigosha, I'm going for Osoto, to just reach that position, have your leg in that position, and then react to the feedback you're getting in the moment and change based off of it rather than have this fixed idea of what you're doing in your head.
Yeah, it's this there's like emerging and decaying affordances. We have these nested affordances that exist purely because of how we are attacking. So one of the mistakes people make when they become aware that combinations exist is they do false attacks. So rather than a feint, they'll do like this
Yes.
half-baked 50% near thing
And they get
and
countered.
then you just get smashed through the floor. Yeah. So my
Yeah.
initial attack has to have intentionality. I'm trying to do the throw. Your reaction will inform how the throw progresses, but I'm actually trying to throw you
Or it
unless
has
it
to
is a
be a
feint.
legitimate feint, right? Like
Yes,
you either have to make a legitimate attack or you can't put your body in a position where you're vulnerable.
exactly that. If I show my hip and you react, that's a feint. If I
Yes.
put my whole body in but don't do anything, that is criminal and you should be put in front of a firing squad. Uh, not to overreact.
Since you brought it up, do you think you could explain about nested affordances a little bit? Because, uh, CLA for soccer and baseball and basketball, I'm sure that there are nested affordances, but it's not as critical as with grappling. With grappling, this is, I think, a key concept to be able to apply a constraints-led approach to grappling. So I was wondering if you could just kind of explain a little bit about what nested affordances are.
Yeah, essentially, we're in a position that there's this action reaction principle in most like combat sports, in that I'm doing a thing. You are not a passive recipient of the thing I am doing. You will have your own aims and objectives, and you will do stuff to prevent me winning. In that moment, there will be these different options that become available to me based on how you are reacting to what I've done. So if we reduce it and make it simple, striking sport, if I throw a jab at you and you duck, that now affords me uppercuts.
Yes.
So the affordance of uppercut only exists as this cascading downstream thing that came because I had created a reaction with what I had done initially. So feints create a bunch of nested affordances. Your action reaction, I'm pushing you. You will probably push back into me. I am pulling you. You'll probably pull away. So being aware of these things, that there are these moments that emerge and decay in a really brief time frame, baking these moments into our session design and practice tasks is so crucial. It's why I've been banging the drum about the transition phase for far too long. A lot
Yeah.
of the time in grappling sports, people do discrete phases of play. It'll be a takedown phase. Then we'll stop our takedown phase and we will do a guard passing phase. And
Yes.
then we'll stop our passing phase and we will do a pinning phase. Rather than going, well, this week we've been looking at outside passing. Outside passing only exists in the context of I have got myself into a position that outside passing is now an affordance for me. So
Yes.
usually I will have taken you down,
Or
or
swept you.
yeah, or if you have no pride, you may have pulled guard.
Yes.
So we are putting ourselves in a position that the affordance of outside passing doesn't exist in I stand in front of you, we clap hands and bump fists, and we go, you ready? Let's go.
Yes.
It exists because I have put you on the floor with your feet between you and me, and you are trying to get yourself into a guarded position, and I'm trying to get outside the line of your legs.
And if you
The
train
same
that way,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
sorry, I was saying the same thing exists at the end of it. I have done outside passing. Cool. Consolidating an effective pin after the outside pass, or accepting the affordance of an outstretched limb to submit them after the pass, is as important. It is this nested affordance that only emerges and decays in this brief time frame in the blurry edges between these discrete phases.
Yes.
And yeah, it's really, really underexplored.
Yeah, if you train in those discrete phases, right, you're actually there's going to be gaps where you're not giving people a directive about how to manage that space. Like if you execute a takedown or a sweep, it would be ideal to come up past the person's guard. So if you just start in the open guard, you never teach the person how to manage the space between the end of the takedown or the end of the sweep and when they end up in the person's guard. Um, yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's super important in jujitsu too because there's some tasks like, for example, if we're in the half guard scenario, it's much easier to gain an underhook in half guard than it is to gain the underhook in mount. It's still possible to isolate the arm in mount, but one of the things that's happened is people prefer because it's easier to get the underhook and isolate the arm when you're still in half guard. So if you approach it as a discrete thing and you're just like, okay, just pass the half guard, then you may do passes in such a way that you don't come into the mount or side control with the arm already isolated. Whereas it would actually be better to train the person. Let's isolate arms on the way through the pass. As you're passing, let's get that arm away from the body.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's one of the big bugbears I constantly see in elite international judo is the amount of throws that are done that don't end up in a win are ridiculously high. Like the majority of throws that are done don't win outright. But the transitions between I have thrown you to the floor, I have your limbs extended, I have control of you, and I am placing you on the floor in what is a really good position for me to just snap your limbs. And they let them get to turtle, lie on their back, look at the ref, and stand back up and go again. Like, what are you doing? Like, the
Yeah.
overwhelming opportunities that are being turned down because either they aren't comfortable with those transition phases, they haven't looked at it as a discrete thing frequently enough, they're uncomfortable with their ability versus the ability of their partner, or for whatever reason, I think it's insane. Like for
Yeah.
my club is a pretty recreational club. I think we've competed once since COVID. But when we do compete, my guys really outperform the amount of times they train. Like if we do
Yes.
judo 1 day a week,
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we'd go down into South Wales and we'd compete against guys that were on the Welsh squad, and my guys
Yes.
would end up with medals. They'd be
Yeah,
winning
yeah, yeah.
silvers and golds. And almost always they have tried to do a throw, the person has landed, and they've landed, and they've just gone neck up, looking around, and my guys are like white on rice. They just
Yes.
jump straight in and savage them.
Very
It's
comfortable with the transition phase.
Yeah, yeah. They either lose because the guy they're fighting is just better at judo, like they're really good
Yep.
at throwing you to the floor. If they don't throw them to the floor flat on their back and win, my guys can take them into deep water and ask them
Yep.
questions that they're not very good at answering. So our sort of juice per squeeze ratio is really, really high. Like, yeah.
How do you design games with these nested affordances without getting too complicated? Like one of the beautiful things with constraints-led approach is the simplicity of the directives, and I think this is easier for people to manage mentally. I can imagine with higher level athletes, this is less a problem. Like you could tell them to do five things in a row and it would be fine. But how do you keep it simple while uh, uh, accounting for the importance of these nested affordances and transition periods?
You can, so my magic bullet for almost everything is point systems. So point system essentially is really useful for guiding people's intentions
Yes.
towards doing certain things and their attention to specified information. So one of the ways that you can get them really well coupled to the sort of nested affordances is to really reward a specific thing so that the person they're playing against really doesn't want that thing to happen. So,
Yes.
for example, one of the games I do, and I'm really trying to bake in uh, combination attacks or not just doing a single attack, is if you can throw your opponent with just the one attack, you have attacked them, they've hit the floor, it's worth 10 points to you. If you throw them after that, I have attacked them, they're out of posture, I attack again, I attack again, I attack again, and I catch them on the fourth throw that happens in the same like sequence, if you see what I mean, it's worth one. So this person really does not want to be thrown in that first throw. So they
Uh,
might even overreact to it. I turn in for a hit throw and you go, sod off. Well,
yes.
this has given me a different affordance. We're in a position that me threatening a thing that they do not want to be caught with exaggerates the reaction they get. So you can
Uh,
start picking up on that specified information and couple, ah, they are giving me this opportunity. This is
so
the
you
emergent
increase
affordance.
the volume of that reaction by using the point system, and then now it makes the follow up techniques easier and somewhat less valuable for the initial player, but still it's that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's the same everywhere. So, like, if we've been doing a massive sequence on, let's say, outside passing again, if I say if you pass their guard by going through their legs or stack them, it is worth 10 points to you. Well, in this instance, every time I try and go through the middle of your legs, you will give really exaggerated reactions. So it might get to the point that I'm trying to do some sort of knee cut and you end up over exaggerating, which then affords me outside passing.
Yes, that makes
Yeah,
perfect sense.
I know. It's so simple. Like, just
Too simple.
put some points in, make them do the thing. Like,
You
I
sure you
know.
don't want to have them drill a 10-step technique?
Oh no, don't, crikey. I had some poor kid from my club went to another club the other day, and it was an hour and a half session. He said they did an hour and 20 minutes of drilling,
Oh God.
and he came back and was like, "It was awful. I, uh,
It was no
poor boy
fun at
needed a
all.
cuddle." No, I know.
It's funny too
Yeah,
because so many people will say like, "Oh, I just train for I'm a hobbyist and I don't think I need to be the best in the world, so I don't really want to do this constraints led approach stuff." And I'm like, "But it's more fun anyways. Like you're a hobbyist, you don't want to be the best in the world, so you want to do this rote repetition of a technique for
yeah,
45 minutes like
I know. It's odd, isn't it? Like, I'm of the same opinion. Like, I don't want to join a 11-a-side football team, but I do enjoy kicking a ball about with my friends.
yes,
I don't want to be the best football player on earth, but I don't want to be shit at kicking a ball about with my friends.
yes,
So
yes,
I'm willing to like try and get competent at the thing that I enjoy doing. I don't like there are degrees of getting good. There's I want to be a world champion, and there's I don't want to be rubbish. I
Yes.
don't think anybody takes part in a sport and goes, "No, I'm happy being shit. It's
Yes.
great losing every day." Like, you don't have to be the best, but you want to be better.
And like good enough to
Uh,
have fun, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Literally that. There's a barrier to entry that
Yes.
until you are a certain degree of skill, it's not as fun. Like you're not
Yep.
solving problems.
Yeah,
There's
you're
not
like
this
not in the
organic.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, literally that.
So I guess last question I have for you is about grip fighting, and this is something Chinese wrestling is a little bit different in the sense that there's no restrictions in competition on the gripping. Like you can get a grip and you pretty much can hold it as long as you want. Like every once in a while, if you hold a really dominant grip for like 30 seconds, the ref will be like, okay, yeah, you got to move your hand or you're starting to stall. But there's zero restrictions on the gripping, and the jacket is a bit different, but the gripping is just so important. And as I've learned the principles behind the grip fighting and gotten better with it, it just transformed my performance in the art. Like I went from getting second place or third place and it kind of being a mess to no one scoring a point on me. Like just really transformed my performance. So I'm curious what your approach is to training the gripping because I know it's important. So I'm just wondering, how do you do that with judo and what's your what kind of games do you play and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I suppose there's two things. One of them is the time frame, the window that exists to execute a technique once you have established dominant grip is
Yes.
pretty narrow. People
Yeah.
form quite a bad habit of getting grips and then decide, all right, well, I've got a grip. Now I'll start to probe a bit. When you get your grip, the time frame from you having your grip to your opponent going, shit, they've got a good grip and really struggling to break that grip is really narrow. So
Yes.
we play a game called Quick Grip, where you establish a grip. You have to throw them within 5 seconds or an amount of time. They're not there actually counting, but this has been long enough, and you have to change your grip. So I've got sleeve lapel. I have been 5 seconds and I've not thrown you. I need to switch to an underhook, or I need to
Yes.
switch to a Seimagi grip, or I need to
Oh,
switch to. We're constantly changing our grip within those 5 seconds. We do on the flip side of that, we do a lot of two-on-one games. So can I get two hands on you while you have one hand on me?
yeah, that's something that's the same with Chinese wrestling is trying to have a superiority in the number of grips,
Yep.
or like have inside position with because we do a lot of like holding the jacket and then pulling the person in and popping their grips off without letting go of the other grips. So yeah, that seems similar in some ways.
Yeah, there's like an inherent mechanical advantage that we can gain as a right versus left-hander. So if you are a left-handed player and I'm a right-handed player, the battle is for inside space. So if I have
Yes.
hold of your collar and your hand is outside of my arm holding my collar, I have some advantage. It's
Yes.
not you have won, you've got the inside space, they can't do anything. But my capacity to break your balance is exponentially higher. I don't have to push through all of your shoulders. I'm just moving your head. It's a
Yes.
lot easier to do. The inverse is right against right or left against left. If you're the same stance, you have the same power
Yep.
hand. The battle is to control what would be their collar hand.
Yes.
The mistake a lot of people make, and at a ridiculously high level as well, is they can be really casual in how they try and place their lapel hand. So, as a right-handed player, if I try and put my right hand on you first and I
Yes.
reach out to
Exactly.
grip your collar, I am an idiot. Like I
Yes, no,
am
this is
essentially,
exactly what I teach people. So I get your base hand first, and then when they're reaching with their power hand, you're able to control it, right? And you keep your power hand free so that you don't end up
yep. It's essentially
stuck.
that. We don't want them, if somebody reaches with their lapel side hand to my collar without controlling my sleeve first, I will turn in and I will try and throw them.
Yes,
The chance of them resisting the throw is really low because they have no control on my rotating shoulder. My right shoulder is the one that wants to turn into you. You have no grip on there. I can
yes,
just turn into you and smash you through the floor. If my throw is poor, if it's not a great attack, the chance of you countering me is next to zero because you don't have any connections. So it is a free roll of the dice. Uh, yeah, one of my young kids, he's just gone off to university actually. He wins consistently just by doing this. He
Yes.
waits, puts one hand back, leaves his shoulder forward, they reach for it, and he just throws them.
He
Um,
baits them into the grip.
Absolutely. A
Yeah.
thing I used to do when I was more of a prick when I was younger is I would pull my gi out. I'd make like a big pocket and I'd put it up to them. So you're literally saying, "Here's my lapel. Would you like it?" And as they
Have it.
reach, you could just snatch their arm and throw them. Eventually, people cotton on that it's not a good idea to take the grip that someone offers you. Um, yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I do the
the
same
order of
thing in
operations for
Nogi.
how we place our hands.
I'll just stick my wrist out so that people will grab it, and then I snatch their arm from the grip. I'm like, here, grab my wrist, so you can get your, so I get your elbow really far from your ribs, and now there's this big space for me to get an underhook.
Thank you. Yeah,
Really cool,
exactly
man.
that.
I really appreciate you doing this. It was some really good stuff. I learned a lot. Just absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Not at all. Nice chatting.